Take a good look at this screen. Go ahead, lean in. $4,200.74. That's it. That's the grand total of 35 years of hauling cast iron boilers up frozen basement stairs in Milwaukee. That's every overtime shift, every slipped disc, and every cent of the $340,000 I had in liquid cash when I touched down in this country 2 years ago. I traded a life of dignity for a plastic crate in a windowless studio in the gut of Cebu City, where the air smells like diesel exhaust and old cooking oil, and the humidity sits on your chest like a wet wool blanket. My back is screaming right now. It's a dull, rhythmic throb that reminds me I'm 62, not 26. Back home, I had a heating pad and a recliner. Here I have a concrete floor and a fan that does nothing but move the heat from one side of the room to the other. I see you watching this, probably sitting in your car or at your desk, looking at flight prices and expats in paradise videos. You think you're different. You think you're the smartest man in the room because you have a pocket full of US dollars and a lifetime of Western cynicism. I thought the same thing. I thought I was buying my way into a throne, a place where I'd finally be seen, respected, and loved for being a provider. I didn't realize I wasn't a king. I was just an ATM with a pulse. I didn't buy peace, kid. I spent every dime I ever earned to buy my own ruin, and I signed the papers with a smile because a 24-year-old girl told me I looked handsome in the moonlight. Don't look away. You need to see what living like a king actually looks like when the money runs out and the mask falls off. This isn't a tragedy, it's an accounting, and the numbers don't lie. Before I was a king in the Philippines, I was a ghost in Milwaukee. Close your eyes and try to feel it. It's 6 in the morning in February. The wind is howling off Lake Michigan, cutting through your coveralls like they're made of tissue paper. My job for 35 years was simple. I hauled 500-pound cast iron boilers up and down frozen basement stairs. I spent my life in the dark, breathing in rust, asbestos, and coal dust, wrestling metal that didn't want to move. My reward? A lower back that feels like it's being gnawed on by a shark every time I tie my shoes. By the time I hit 60, I wasn't a man anymore. I was a tool that had been used until the teeth were stripped. Then came the divorce. 22 years of marriage, gone in a 6-month legal blur. My ex-wife didn't just take my heart. She took the 4-bedroom house we'd finally paid off and exactly half of the 401k I'd bled for. I walked away with a cramped condo and $340,000 in liquid cash after selling off every wrench and pipe cutter in my shop. I was invisible, kid. That's the part they don't tell you about being an older man in the West. You're only as good as what you can provide, and once the shop closes, you're just a line item in someone else's budget. My kids? They're good people, I guess, but they only called when their alternator died or their rent was short. Nobody asked how Arthur was doing. They just asked what Arthur could do for them. I spent my night sitting in that condo, eating a $3 frozen lasagna and staring at the blue light of my laptop. That's where it starts. You find those expats in paradise forums. You see these guys who look just like me, tired and gray, sitting on a beach with a drink in their hand and a woman who looks like a movie star draped over their shoulder. The algorithm knows when you're lonely. It started feeding me videos of palm trees and traditional values. It told me that for my $2,200 a month Social Security check, I could be a god. I could have the respect I never got in Milwaukee. I could have a traditional woman who wouldn't look at me like I was a broken appliance. I was ripe for the picking. I was so hungry for a kind word and a warm smile that I would have traded my soul for it. Instead, I just traded my life savings. I thought I was escaping the gray of Wisconsin for the colors of the tropics. I didn't realize I was just moving from a cold basement into a very expensive trap. It started with a click. Late at night, 3 hits of cheap bourbon in, staring at a forum thread titled, "How to Retire Like a God on $2,000 a Month." There was this guy, a success coach, he called himself. Probably just some grifter in a stained Hawaiian shirt, but to me, in that moment, he sounded like a prophet. He spoke about the Great Escape. He talked about places where men like us, men who've been chewed up and spat out by the Western machine, are still seen as prizes. He called us passport kings. I drank the Kool-Aid, kid. I drank the whole damn pitcher. Then came Maria. She was 24, from a province called Negros Oriental. We started on Skype. For 6 months I lived for that little green online dot on my screen. I'd be sitting there in my thermal underwear with the heater hummed to the max, and she'd be there in a thin sundress, the tropical sun washing over her face, roosters crowing in the background. She didn't ask for a dime. Not at first. That's how they get you. She asked for my wisdom. She told me I had strong shoulders and kind eyes. She promised she'd cook the meals I liked, massage the knots out of my lower back every single night, and never leave my side. She made me feel like Arthur Miller again, not just the boiler guy with the bad spine. She made me feel necessary. I started running the numbers, and they felt like a cheat code to life. My $2,200 Social Security check was basically a lottery win over there. And I had that $340,000 sitting in liquid cash from the sale of the condo and my shop equipment. In Milwaukee, that's a decent decade if you're frugal. In the Philippines, I figured it was 3 lifetimes of absolute luxury. I wasn't just buying a plane ticket. I was buying a restart button on my entire existence. I convinced myself I was being strategic. I told myself I was a provider, finally finding a traditional woman who actually deserved one. I thought I was the one holding all the cards because I had the dollars and the blue passport. I was so busy looking at the palm trees on the grainy Skype feed that I didn't see the teeth in her smile. I sold every pipe wrench and welding torch I owned, signed the final papers on the condo, and walked toward that departure gate thinking I was the smartest man in Wisconsin. God, I was just a lamb walking straight into the butcher shop with a fat wallet and a desperate heart. When I stepped off that plane in Dumaguete, the heat didn't just hit me. It embraced me. It was thick, sweet with the scent of jasmine and wood smoke, and a far cry from the biting metallic chill of a Wisconsin winter. For the first time in a decade, my lungs didn't feel like they were breathing in rust. I walked through those airport doors, and I wasn't Arthur the boiler guy anymore. I was a giant. I was a celebrity. I was a man with a blue passport and a bank account that made me a god in a land of concrete and corrugated tin. And then there was Maria. She was standing there with a hand-painted sign that just said, Arthur. She looked smaller than she did on the screen, more fragile. When she hugged me, she smelled like coconut oil and laundry soap. She didn't ask for my luggage. She insisted on carrying the smaller bag herself, looking up at me with those wide, dark eyes like I'd just descended from Olympus. That's the drug, kid. That's the high they don't warn you about in the forums. It's not just the sex. It's the look of absolute, unearned devotion. For a man who'd been invisible for 35 years, that look is more addictive than heroin. The first 6 months were a blur of yes, Poe, and whatever you want, Arthur. I felt like a king who'd finally found his kingdom. We lived in a high-end rental while I started the project of a lifetime. I decided to build us a palace, a modern 3-story villa overlooking the ocean, with floor-to-ceiling glass and a kitchen that cost more than most people in that province make in a decade. I dropped $165,000 on that house. I didn't blink. I was a provider, remember? I wanted to show her, and her whole village, that I was the real deal. I knew the laws. I'd read the warnings. A foreigner can't own land in the Philippines. But I was smart. I was different. Maria was so humble, so traditional. She'd spend hours on her knees scrubbing the floors of our rental, refusing to let me hire a maid because she wanted to take care of her man. When the lawyer told me the title had to be in her name, I looked at her sweet, shy face and thought, who else would I trust? She's my future. I signed the papers with a flourish, feeling like a benevolent hero. I bought her a $35,000 Toyota Fortuner, too. A big, white SUV so she could drive her family around in dignity. I put that in her name, too, for insurance purposes, she said. I believed her because I wanted to believe I was worth that much loyalty. We were burning through $3,500 a month. Luxury dinners, weekend trips to Cebu, new clothes for her entire family. I was the American uncle, the great white hope of Negroes Oriental. I'd sit on the porch of our half-finished villa, sipping a cold San Miguel, watching the sunset, and thinking about those poor bastards back in Milwaukee shivering in their basements. I thought I'd beaten the system. I thought I'd bought my way out of the human condition. I didn't realize that every dollar I spent was just another brick in a wall they were building around me. I was so drunk on the power of my own wallet that I couldn't see the way her brothers looked at the SUV, or how her shy smiles started to feel a little more like a practiced routine. I was a king, all right, but I was a king in a play, and the curtain was already starting to twitch. The bleeding doesn't start with a gash, kid. It starts with a pinprick, a single tear over a bowl of rice. About 8 months in, the yes po stage started to shift. Maria didn't stop being sweet. She just started being worried. It began with her mother, a sudden heart condition that required an immediate deposit at a private clinic in Cebu. $18,500. That's what I wired. 18.5. In Milwaukee, that's a decent used truck. Here, I thought it was the price of a life. I didn't ask for a receipt. How do you ask the woman you love for a line-item invoice while she's sobbing about her mother's mitral valve? You don't. You play the hero. You wire the money and feel like a saint. I didn't know the clinic was a rented office space and the surgeon was a guy she'd been seeing since she was 16. I was just the guy paying for their future together. Then came the security talk. She told me she didn't want to be a burden on my Social Security forever. She wanted a business, a sorry store, a local grocery, but a big one, a wholesale hub for the village. She said it would be our legacy. I dropped $22,000 to build it and stock it. 22 grand. I watched the concrete pour and felt proud. I thought I was teaching her how to fish. In reality, I was just filling a bucket with a hole in the bottom. The money disappeared into bad debts and unpaid credits from neighbors. At least that's what she told me. What actually happened? That $22,000 bought a nice plot of coconut land 3 towns over, registered in her name and her cousin's name. And don't get me started on the Toyota Fortuner. $35,000, cash. I wanted her to be safe on these chaotic roads. She insisted the registration stay in her name. "It's for the insurance, Arthur," she'd say, her voice like honey. "If a foreigner is the owner, the police will target us for bribes every time we're pulled over. It's better this way. For us." I nodded like a bobblehead. I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored the fact that I was the only one paying for a car I didn't technically own. Between the house construction, the emergencies, and our $3,500 monthly burn rate, The math was getting ugly. We were living large, steaks in Cebu, designer bags for her, weekend resorts, but I was watching my liquid cash melt away like an ice cube in the Philippine sun. Every time I'd try to bring up the budget, she had a way of making me feel like a cheap American. She'd get quiet. She'd withhold that affection I'd become addicted to. And like a pathetic junkie, I'd apologize and open the wallet again. I was rationalizing every cent. I told myself it was settling in costs. I told myself I was investing in the community. I sat on that porch looking at the ocean while $85,000 evaporated into lifestyle over 2 years. I wasn't a king. I was a slow-leak pipe in a basement I didn't own, and Maria was the only one with the bucket. I was so busy being the provider that I didn't realize I was providing for a life that didn't include me once the balance hit zero. Take a look at your own bank app, kid. If the numbers are going down and her smiles are staying the same, you aren't in love. You're in a transaction where you're the only one who doesn't know the price. I told her I was heading to Hong Kong for a 3-day visa run. I even made a production of it, packing the leather suitcase she'd picked out for me, kissing her forehead at the terminal, and telling her to take care of our home while I was gone. I watched her wave from the curb, that shy, provincial smile still plastered on her face. I didn't go to the gate. I took a taxi to a windowless hourly hotel 2 blocks from the mall and sat in the dark with a laptop and a bottle of lukewarm water. I'd spent $9,800 on a private investigator and a set of high-end hidden cameras tucked into the crown molding of our palace. It was the best money I ever spent, and the most painful. At exactly 11:15 p.m., the white Toyota Fortuner, my $35,000 pride and joy, backed into the driveway. But Maria wasn't driving. A kid no older than 25, wearing a designer shirt I probably paid for, hopped out of the driver's seat. 2 other cousins followed. I watched the screen as they started hauling the 50-inch LED TV, the Italian leather sofa, and the imported kitchen appliances into the back of a rented truck. The mask didn't just slip, kid. It was incinerated. On that grainy digital feed, I saw the woman I'd called my traditional savior, laughing as she handed the surgeon, the one who supposedly saved her mother's heart, the keys to my heavy floor safe. She didn't look shy. She looked like a CEO closing a deal. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I walked through the front door while they were mid-struggle with the refrigerator. The silence that hit that room was heavier than any boiler I ever hauled in Milwaukee. Maria didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even try to lie. She just stood there, wiped the sweat from her forehead, and looked at me with a cold, jagged loathing that made my blood turn to ice. It was the look of a person who had spent 2 years pretending to love a ghost just to get to his wallet. "The safe is empty, Maria," I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. "I moved the cash and the titles 3 days ago." Her cousin stepped toward me, chest out, but I didn't flinch. I just held up a heavy manila folder. I told them exactly what was inside: a filed notice of adverse claim on the property, proof that I'd intentionally withheld the last property tax installment to cloud the title, and, most importantly, a criminal complaint for adultery. You see, in this country, adultery isn't just a reason for a fight. It's a jailable offense. "You have 10 minutes, I told her, looking straight into those dark eyes that used to tell me I was handsome. "Leave the truck keys on the counter. Leave the house. If I see any of you on this street in 11 minutes, we all go to the precinct. I've got nothing left to lose, Maria. I'm an old man with a bad back and an empty bank account. But you've got a long time to spend in a concrete cell." The shift was instantaneous. The traditional girl vanished, replaced by a spitting, cursing predator. She realized the ATM was out of service. She grabbed her designer bag, signaled her crew, and walked out of that house without a single backward glance. No apology, no explanation, just the sound of the Fortuner's engine roaring as they sped away into the humid night. I sat down on the floor of my empty, half-finished palace. The tiles were cold. My back was screaming. I looked at the folder in my lap and realized I hadn't won a damn thing. I had the car and a legal nightmare of a house I could never truly own, and exactly $4,200 to my name. I'd played the passport king for 2 years, and the crown had finally crushed my skull. Lean in close, kid, because this is the part the vloggers skip. The moment you realize you didn't buy a new life. You just paid a very high price to find out exactly how much you're worth when the money's gone. And the answer is usually zero. So here I am, the king of nothing, sitting on a blue plastic crate in a room that costs $200 a month. The walls are bare concrete. The ceiling fan just hums and vibrates without moving a breath of air. And the only thing I have to show for 35 years of sweat and iron is the glowing screen of this phone. Let's do the math together. I want you to hear the numbers because numbers don't have feelings. They don't smile at you or tell you that you have kind eyes. $165,000. That's what it cost to build a palace on land I could never legally own. It's a beautiful tombstone for my retirement, sitting empty in Dumaguete while the weeds take over the driveway. $22,000 for a grocery store that was never meant to sell anything but my own common sense. $18,500 for a heart surgery that was just a down payment on Maria's real boyfriend's new life. $35,000 for a Toyota Fortuner that I won back in a legal settlement, but I can't even afford the gas for it now, let alone the bribes to keep the local cops from impounding it. $85,000 just evaporated, burned away on steaks, resorts, and designer clothes to keep a 24-year-old girl from looking bored when I walked into the room. Add in the 10 grand I paid to the PI to watch my life go up in flames, and the total comes to $335,800. I traded the security of my old age for a 2-year performance. I paid over $300,000 to hear a woman lie to me in a way that made me feel like I wasn't invisible. That's the real burn rate, kid. It's not the price of the San Miguel or the rent. It's the cost of your own ego. I was arrogant. I thought I was the smart American who found a loophole in the human heart. I thought my dollars made me a provider, but a provider provides for a family, not a predator. I ignored every red flag because I was too busy looking at the reflection of the man I used to be in her eyes. I wanted the lie more than I wanted the truth, and in this part of the world, they will sell you exactly as much of that lie as you can afford. Now I live on my Social Security check, $2,200 a month. In a U.S. city, I'd be a pauper. Here, in this slum, I'm doing okay. I eat rice and dried fish. I walk because my back hurts less than my pride does when I try to hail a taxi. I spend my days watching the young guys get off the planes with that same look of passport king swagger I had 2 years ago. I want to grab them by the shoulders and show them this room. I want to show them the scar on my bank account. But they wouldn't listen. I didn't listen. So here's the final accounting, straight from the man on the plastic crate. If you think she loves you for your traditional values while you're paying her sister's tuition and her mother's medical bills, you aren't a king. You aren't a savior. You're just a walking, breathing ATM with a blue passport and a deadline. The money is gone. That's just paper. But the time? The 35 years of boilers and basements I traded for a 2-year scam. That's the theft that really kills you. Don't buy the lie, kid, because once the balance hits zero, the traditional girl is gone, and you're just another old man in a hot room, wondering how you got so smart and ended up so damn stupid.